Internal validity. Dear students, in order to avoid errors in sampling, we must know something about the internal and external validity. So here we are going to explore internal validity. Internal validity is, a requirement when we are conducting a study, and we must know that the change in the dependent variable is only and only due to the manipulation of the independent variable, right? So when we are going to discuss this issue in terms of our technical procedures, then we are concerned with internal validity. Because as a researcher, we must be able to avoid errors in sampling, and errors in sampling would be influencing our internal validity of the study. So we must know the types of validities, and then the question is, when you are concerned with internal validity, then basically what you are doing is that you want to explore that how sound is your studies, right? How sound is your research design? So if you are exploring this question, then you are actually looking for internal validity. So you must know that the sound study is free from this error related to internal validity, and it's more valid internally when it is sound and the research design is solid, right? It's a critically important issue that you must be coming up with a very sound, very solid research design. And when you are controlling other variables, then the connection between the independent variable and the dependent variable, that is sound, and then the dependent variable is the change you are observing in dependent variable is only due to the manipulation of the independent variable, right? So if you are making it sure, then you are bringing in internal validity to your studies. The point is that the effects which are to be observed, which are observed in the dependent variable, are only due to independent variable. When you manipulate, when you just treat the independent variable, then the changes are observed in the dependent variable, and that's the crucial point related to the causal relationship between independent variable and dependent variable, right? So this connection is, the causal connection is the focus of internal validity. Further, in order to understand internal validity, we must know that at times there are extraneous variables, and extraneous variables are the confounding variables which may intervene, and they may bring change in the dependent variable, right? So when you are having such a situation, when other than independent variable the changes are observed, the changes are caused in the dependent variable, then your internal validity of the study is influenced and it is then disturbed, right? So it is concerned with the results of the study, and if your results of the study are then misleading, so you must be avoiding those misleading results. And how could you just avoid those misleading or extraneous variables? So there are ways, there are techniques which you must be using. And internal validity in some of the qualitative studies are, qualitative experts call credibility. They call credibility to internal validity, right, in qualitative studies. But what are those tips and what are those procedures through which you can make sure the internal validity of your study? There are various tips and techniques. Like one is the avoiding of selection bias. Whenever you select your sample, it should not be biased. You are not actually selecting your sample from a particular group and just neglecting the rest of the population. So if you just collect one group or one subgroup from the population and the rest is avoided, the rest is not included, then the selection bias is taking place. And this selection bias would ultimately influence your internal validity. Then we have another factor which also influences your internal validity, and that is the maturation process. Maturation process is like, for example, you want to go for a study which is a longitudinal study, right? And you are collecting data from the same sample over two points of time period. Okay, so you just collect data, but then you start treating that sample, and after like few months or 6 or 7 months, you are going for another data collection. So within this time frame, these 6 to 7 months, this time span is not only bringing change in their physical and mental maturation, but at the same time the external factors are also taking place. So this maturation in times may be influencing your results, which you would take ultimately. So the point is that the changes which are your results at the end, they may not be just because of your treatment or your treatment for the samples, right? So you must avoid such a situation when the maturation is disturbing your results. Okay, so maturation is another point which is in a position to influence your internal validity. Then we also have sample size. If your sample is undersized, if it's not appropriate or balanced size to the requirement of your study, then it may also influence your internal validity. So you must decide that what is your balanced sample size, right? And then that sample size is appropriate to your study and your research questions. Okay. Then instrumentation is another point when your research topic is, for example, related to interview. You want to go for information related data collection, but you go for questionnaire. So this difference in instrumentation may also influence your internal validity. And then there might be some problem with your instrument, like it may not be valid, it may not be examining what it is supposed to examine, right? So if it is an invalid sort of instrumentation, then it may also disturb your internal validity. Similarly, there are confounding factors other than the independent variable, which may influence your dependent variable. And you would think that this is the independent variable which is influencing the dependent variable, right? But the change is actually taking place because of the confounding factors. So you must be controlling them through various techniques and through various points that may not spoil your data, right? So in order to maintain your internal validity, you must be confounding other factors. Similarly, testing method and the validity of the testing method and the measurement of the testing method. Like for example, you want to take measurement of an area, then you must have appropriate measurement tool, right? And then you must be going for a procedure for measurement which is equally valid. So that is something which would bring in internal validity to your data. History is another point which may be influencing your internal validity, and it's related to external time period when something may be taking place, right? And they may be influencing your data. So that historical changes in the situation in the society, that may be affecting your data, and that would be disturbing your internal validity. Similarly, attrition, when some of the samples are withdrawing, when they are dropping, and ultimately very few number of the samples are the part of your ultimate conclusive data. So that attrition may also influence your internal validity. Then in order to make your study internally valid, you must be taking care of these factors which may influence your internal validity of the study.